Okay then, so I'll start. Welcome everyone. Thank you for inviting me on. It's great to see you all again after a little while since the last workshop. I think the last time we saw each other might have been at the workshop at ADCID, so which is quite interesting. Got me dancing on stage. So I'm going to talk about community-based and embedded teams as part of this kind of immersive participatory theatre work that I'm involved in. So I'm Stephen Sillett, just to let you know. Practice-based. I'm doing a practice-based PhD now, actually, to try and understand some of the processes and be able to research some of these areas at the Salomons Institute of Applied Psychology in the UK. And I co-founded an organisation through developing the work in South Africa with communities in rural Ingwavuma called ADCID, or Aid in Dramatic Change in Development. And with that work with the very local communities, we also saw this need to connect with the organisations that we were working with and try to understand how to bridge that work with policy level or even organisational policy work. So this thing called Infusion came about, which is actually an adaptation of this multi-arts event for infusing different artists together. But this is the same idea, but this was for different types of practices that you might have when doing your community development theatre work in organisations that are service providers. So that could be connecting in with their ESL, could be connecting in with their therapeutics, it could be feeding programs if it's somewhere like Africa, it could be all sorts of things. So that sort of raised those questions. So I'm going to just speak about some of that very quickly. And this is slightly to the side, but what this realized was that at the bottom there you can see like the living area or the land that we're in. So we were really working in these communities over a long period of time. And then you've got this organizational taskscape, which is the organization you tend to connect to. So, you know, it can be in Canada, it could be a safe house, it could be a multicultural center, it could be an educational trust, it could be a HIV clinic, all sorts of things. And then at the top there, you've got this like official institutional body. And the thing that I'm going to speak to a little bit is that this relationship with the organization and their fields is really important to how you can really show the value of going deeper in the land-based work, which I really believe in with the community. So, you know, they require these kind of dynamics. We call it intersubjective dynamics, i.e., you know, just like we are in drama, it's about that dynamic of being live with people, intersubjectivity. It's not just what people put out there as labels. It's about that kind of going with the flow, and dance particularly really gets that. So, and I'm going to go quick through this bit, but this is something that I've sort of seen as the challenge is that at the bottom here, you see the this kind of land-based work, which is where our work is based. Is often people look at that and try and find impacts, and they do their research, and it all goes back up to the researcher who's up at the university in this kind of abstract way.
Can't see. Oh, I opened the.
And the organizations, they report up in another way to some other parts of the university, and they merge together and tell us what they think about what will help. Now, there's some big problems here because the community requires us, or we require to know, well, what's actually going on in this deeper scale down here, so that we're not just going and having someone extract what's going on, but how can they go into what's actually happening with the relationship with the people in the organizations who are actually going out and being with the community in the safe houses, in all of these places. And that's what we've really realized over long-term projects, especially where we actually develop a team of local community members who work in the organization or train up staff in the organization, that this dynamic here and the scaling deeper and deeper in the context is missed, because all the research goes back up to someone who's in a research, and they produce papers and they do all of this sort of thing, but it's at a very analytical level. We really need this level of meaningfulness.
So,
Because that's what,
Stephen, before you continue, there's some people that had joined us. Just want to quickly welcome them.
okay.
And I'm going to try and synthesize what you said just to really translate it real quick.
Okay.
So bon, bienvenue tous ceux qui viennent d'arriver à notre session. Donc on est ici avec Stephen Sillett. Il nous explique un peu le développement dans la communauté, comment on peut monter ça dans un plus haut niveau. Il dit plus spécifiquement l'assistance pour le changement dramatique dans le développement. Donc ce qu'il rapidement dans ce contexte qu'il nous explique, c'est que on a plusieurs communautés, surtout dans la communauté artistique, il y a plusieurs communautés, plusieurs gens dans des différents types de communautés, mais on se retrouve tous dans un même lieu si on veut. Et lui, il fait en sorte que lui, il veut aider il y a des compagnies, des comités, il y a des corps qui veulent aider ces communautés-là, mais il veut aider, comment on peut dire, la liaison, parce que on peut pas avoir, imaginons que il y a un groupe de danseurs, si on veut, de danseurs, et il y a une communauté qui est là pour aider le groupe de danseurs. Pourtant, il faut être sûr que tout le monde se comprenne sur le même niveau. Et ça se peut que des fois, on fait beaucoup de recherches, on fait beaucoup de statistiques, etc., par rapport à ces communautés-là, mais qui retournent à des gens qui se retrouvent dans des bureaux ou dans des endroits où ils touchent même pas les gens. Donc, il veut être sûr qu'il y a un lien qui connecte tout le monde et que tout le monde parle le même langage. Est-ce que un peu on me comprend plus ou moins où on est jusqu'à là?
Thank you.
Perfect translation. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so
just one thing, I don't know if the people like who join us speak French or English, so because Alter resident, just to make sure, but that's fine.
So I can give, yeah, if you want to give me a heads up, I can
Bonjour.
just give you a chance to do some translating.
Okay. Keep going, please.
Okay, so this whole question sort of comes down to this issue of scaling, and it's probably likely that when you've worked in communities and you're working with organizations, they're very happy for us to come in, do our workshop, and then go, and that's great. And I can understand it, but there's also things where when we want to start to embed and sort of connect into the infrastructure and show some of the learnings and how that can be used, you know, sometimes you can get met with that, oh, you artists, you do magic, and it's kind of, and as we know, you know, it's like everything. There's a certain je ne sais quoi about drama, but there's also a certain, you know, a way that we strategically work, and we do get a lot of insights, and also we do need to respect that they've got a lot of pressures on their time. But this question of how can this kind of dynamic with the organizations be developed so that we actually can bring together people at these institutions with these organizations and use our knowledge at that level, rather than it always being someone coming down doing a survey with the community, extracting it away from what we're doing or other people are doing, and it being synthesized in sort of an abstract way. How can it be taken and used within the context of services and projects that are evolving? And that this sort of approach obviously is actually much more developed in African development contexts in many cases, because that's the way that you have to keep going. It's also very much the opposite in development context. There's more of the bad stuff and there's more of some of the more innovative stuff. So do you want to say anything on that, or I can carry on?
I think so far I can carry on. Well, okay. Donc je répète juste, il continue juste plus son point, c'est juste pour mettre plus en détail qu'il y a des institutions qui sont là, il veut vraiment être sûr que les institutions qui sont là pour, soi-disant, aider ces communautés-là, ces communautés artistiques, où il y a divers types de personnes, il veut être sûr que ce que lui fait en fait, et lui, de le groupe dont il fait partie, on veut être sûr que ces institutions-là ne font pas un service au premier degré, c'est-à-dire, on veut pas qu'on vienne à un endroit où on trouve une communauté d'artistes ou je sais pas quoi, et on donne juste on prend juste des sondages, si on veut, des sondages pour dire, ok, telle personne sont comme ça, comme ça, comme ça. Après, ils retournent chez eux. Après, rien de concret n'est fait. c'est juste un service rapidement. Oui, il y a un atelier il y a un atelier fait, après c'est tout. Non, il veut être sûr que il y a un certain niveau d'intégrité, intégration dans ces communautés-là pour être sûr que tout soit touché, que tout soit développé, que tout le monde peut se développer, peut monter à un prochain niveau en même temps. Donc on peut, c'est plus ou moins ça qu'il raconte. So go ahead.
Merci. Okay. And okay, so we one of the ways I've been looking at this is really understanding at this deep level, how are we embodied? How do we take our attention? And this also ties in. So, you know, we have this sort of more vertical conceptual embodiment where we're talking with words and we're maybe in an artificial studio, and theatre's often, you know, creating wonderful landscapes like that. And there's also that a deeper biophysical embodiment, which we can take our attention to maybe when we're doing more ritual and maybe more dance, which is particularly dance, which is connected to the land. And I think that a lot of arts in Africa is much stronger at that aspect. And there are different ways of taking attention. They have different, what I would say though is you can't do both deeply at the same time. So there are ways we take our attention. And also, I've been doing a lot of work with something called peripersonal space, which is the space which is available to act in. And there's some real interesting science that's come out around that. So I've been looking at that. Our sense of self that we have is really kind of like a construction in the modern world. But we also have, you know, a connection to the land which can be deeper. So just thinking about this in terms of these ways of inactive ecological spatial embodiment. So I don't know if you want to say something briefly, but just basically this verticality being thought about in terms of how we're taking our attention more broadly, and how we take our attention between relating to people and doing actions, which is much more like instrumental.
Okay. I'll let you continue your point because I want to make sure I grasp it properly too.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So basically, just that title is inactive ecological spatial embodiment. So it's the way that inactive is this idea that we are enacting knowledge in the world. It's not in our heads, but it's actually in a dynamic between us and our space and the environment. So the environment, our bodies and our brains are all in one big system. It's not the brain is this computer.
Ok, donc rapidement, quand on dit Inactive Ecological Spatial Embodiment, c'est en gros, c'est le concept de, oui, on est là, on peut se voir au niveau individuel. L'affaire, c'est que on est tous connectés. Donc, il y a l'espace, l'environnement autour de nous, il y a nous, et il y a nous à l'intérieur. Tout ça, il y a tous une connexion là-dessus. Donc, c'est pas comme si... c'est comme on agit sur notre environnement. Oui, on peut penser que notre environnement agit sur nous, mais nous aussi, on agit sur notre environnement. Donc, il y a une espèce de symbiosité qui se crée. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'il dit inactive. C'est comme, il y a notre cerveau, il y a nous, personnellement, il y a l'environnement, et le tout est relié à un certain niveau.
Merci. So, and when we do this this infusion space idea was to create these flexible ways to establish relational spaces for enacting across these different scales. So we have our work with the community, and we create this work, we do the performances, we have the events, we engage participants around particular themes, and then we say, okay, how can we bring this together where you've got people from different types of backgrounds and relate them? So it could be people from the local organization, it could be people who are leaders, it could be the chief in the community, it could be, so this idea of infusion space was to sort of enable that.
Donc l'espace, disons espace infusion space, c'est en gros c'est très simple, c'est comme si oui, on peut faire une activité avec une certaine communauté où on apprend de cette communauté-là, on leur donne l'espace pour faire leurs activités respectives. Mais après ça, c'est trouver une façon, ok, comment est-ce qu'on peut répéter ça, mais avec, on rajoute plusieurs couches on rajoute d'autres personnes dans cet même espace. Donc, on infuse plusieurs types de personnes ayant d'autres expériences soit ayant d'autres expériences de leur vie, soit de niveaux différents, au niveau social, socio-économique, politique, etc., mais le mettre tous dans un même espace où tout le monde peut faire la même activité, mais de façon harmonieusement. Donc, en gros, c'est plus ou moins ça qu'il dit par Infusion Space.
Nice, thank you. So this is one of our projects here where we had, it's called the process is sociodrama topography. It's a process where we were doing this before our participatory theatre with youth, but then we also started using it with adults around water. So this is a community in South Africa, near the borders with Mozambique, and they create a fabric map the size of the room, and they put on there, the pink is the routes to water, if you see that, and so they know it's about them, and then they put stories on the map and start to learn about the social geography, their social landscape, so that they become able to pull together meaningful conversations, because the idea is they're the experts in what it's like to live in these deep rural areas.
Donc, ici, on peut voir, ça c'est un exemple d'activité qui fait dans la communauté. Ça, on se retrouve en Afrique du Sud, ici, proche de Mozambique. Et puis, dans cette salle-là, par exemple, on a plusieurs femmes où on a créé une sorte de carte sur le parterre, et ce que vous voyez en rose, ce sont c'est là où, ce sont les rivières, c'est les sources d'eau de leur région. Et l'idée, c'est que, comme elles savent où se retrouvent ces sources d'eau, ces rivières-là, pourtant elles viennent de différentes parties de cette région-là. Donc, forcément, ça crée un type de conversation où elles peuvent partager tous une même histoire, mais de perspectives différentes, parce qu'ils se retrouvent dans des régions différentes, mais ils partagent ces sources d'eau, ces rivières d'eau-là. Donc, l'idée, c'est qu'ils mettent ces personnes-là, c'est eux les professionnels, c'est eux les experts, et non l'organisme qui vient faire l'activité. L'organisme qui vient faire l'activité, c'est comme si c'est l'élève, et on donne l'espace à ces gens-là pour donner leurs histoires, la façon la plus réelle et avec le plus d'intégrité possible, parce que c'est elles qui vivent ces expériences-là. Donc, c'est ça.
And if you see the man in the yellow top, that's Gideon. So he was one of the artist facilitators in the team that was going out to do this project. So there was 5 members of the team, and they would go out, they would speak to the chief in the local area, they would bring the community together, and then the community would have a vote if they wanted to do the activity, and then they would go back there and do the 3-day workshop, which gets followed up by sort of what innovations they might have, or thoughts about what they can, or we could be helping them with. So yeah, so this is sort of connects to that idea of how do you help support these types of teams, talking about some serious issues around water in this area. Like they have had a drought. They had a drought for about 5 years at one time there. They have some community members, like they still in that area, even though it's South Africa, it's surprising, they still were breastfeeding if people had HIV, because there's more chance of dying from the water than there was from the HIV in the milk. So there was some serious issues around water access and sanitation and health.
Donc il dit en gros, tout d'abord il y a le bonhomme en arrière en jaune, lui il s'appelle Gideon, et c'est lui en fait le chef, comme on dit, he's like the artist, he said he was like the artist, the guy who facilitated more or less the workshop.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, he was one of them. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Gideon c'est un des gens qui facilite la tâche pour faire l'atelier avec ces gens-là. Donc c'est un peu la liaison avec la population de cette région-là et les organismes. Donc on communique, donc il fait beaucoup de va-et-vient avec les deux parties pour être sûr que tout le monde reste sur le même niveau. Et en gros c'est ça en fait. Il trouvait que c'était très important. On trouvait que c'est très important de faire une activité de même parce que déjà, on voit que, on a dit tout à l'heure que ces personnes-là, on a mis de façon figurative les rivières et les sources d'eau, mais on sait qu'il y a eu des sécheresses. Et quand il y a des sécheresses, ça crée beaucoup d'autres problèmes économiques, sociopolitiques, etc. Et même rendu au VIH, où là-bas c'est encore assez répandu, où tu avais même des femmes qui doivent allaiter et sont infectées, mais tu as plus de chances de mourir à cause de l'eau ou la sécheresse et non par le VIH. Donc, ça, c'est des conversations à avoir dans ces régions-là et qu'ils trouvent que des ateliers de même facilitent la chance d'avoir ces conversations et vraiment voir où on est rendu et comment on peut avancer ensemble.
Perfect. And all of the work there is facilitated in ADCID Zulu language. So, and they would, so it's not in English, it's in Zulu.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll carry on.
Sure.
So this is just this general question of scaling, you know, so the same idea. If you've got a local ecosystem, there's a lot of talk now of scaling deep, and this is a community in Niagara doing the connecting across age and culture on the left. Yeah, you mentioned that. Just say the one on the left is connecting across age and culture, and we actually did connect to Sophie Fran briefly there, but it was mostly different cultures from Fort Erie Multicultural Centre and Niagara Folk Arts Centre.
Okay, so there's just so I can grasp it properly, because I know so scaling up, scaling deep, and scaling out. Those are like the three types of that's the dynamic that you're using to reach out these different populations depending on.
The left is scaling deeper, and then scaling out is a bit more like how do we create different ways of communication, which is the middle one. So people with disability.
Okay.
Then the right one is the forum theatre play, which might be to scale up. So on the right would be that, okay, how can you take the learning from and scale it up to people higher up in power?
Donc il dit par exemple, comme on voit ici, il y a trois concepts, il y a scaling up, scaling deep et scaling out. Quand on dit scaling deep, c'est par exemple comment on peut atteindre dans une même communauté, comment est-ce qu'on peut développer ces relations déjà créées dans cette communauté-là, mais vraiment aller plus profondément. Donc deep, donc scale deep pour mettre à l'échelle, mais de façon plus profondément. Scaling up, c'est maintenant comment on peut trouver de nouvelles façons d'atteindre le monde ayant des I forget how
scaling up. Yeah, scaling up is more up to higher power.
Yeah, higher power. Okay, so scaling up, c'est à des niveaux où peut-être c'est plus difficile de les atteindre. Donc, et ça peut vraiment être, ça peut être des gens qui, par exemple, ont des difficultés difficultés physiques, difficultés à entendre ou je sais pas quoi. Donc, ça, c'est des différents types de personnes où on peut essayer de les atteindre toujours, mais dans leur façon qu'ils peuvent comprendre. Et scaling out, c'est là où on prend tout un atelier ou une idée, mais comment est-ce qu'on peut mettre ça maintenant dans une communauté complètement à part, complètement ailleurs, qui n'a pas exactement l'infrastructure que nous avons. Donc, c'est un peu ça, c'est vraiment out, plus à distance, si on veut.
So this is like connecting these systemic perspectives and these ways of embodied knowing. So the embodied knowing is really strong at the community level, and these sort of systems thinking is high up, and they're normally very separate. So it's like connecting the two.
Okay. So, can you just repeat that actually?
So it's connecting these very kind of high level, or these kind of organizational abstract system ideas with these deep ways of embodied knowing, and that's why we get people to do stuff in the maps and.
Donc en fait c'est l'idée de connecter par exemple vraiment des façons abstraites à penser, des idées assez grosses, des idées assez peut-être qui peuvent être un peu complexes ou compliquées, mais de les connecter avec des connaissances innées. On a tous des connaissances innées, veut pas, mais l'idée c'est de trouver une façon de connecter les deux, comme ça peut comme ça crée quelque chose de complètement nouveau et de complètement merveilleux, quoi, honnêtement. Donc, c'est ça.
Merci. And this is a bit of a diagram that we use when looking at that for different things, is like that relating to and action. So on the right side is like action is embedded in tools, it's situated, And so when we're thinking about actions, I put a lot of the time into what's the space that we're in, how are we situated, what's the landscape that is enabling things. So we might think about that with water, but then also when we're talking to people, what's the place that's coming forward? What's the kind of the artistic interactions, the kind of ecological living side to it all, not just the hard side. So this sort of grounding, the main thing this just shows is this idea of grounding ourselves in and really taking ourselves down into the knowing with the body and the land.
Donc ici, c'est ça. Donc situating awareness, c'est juste être au courant de nos alentours, en fait. C'est, par exemple, quand il dit action is embedded, l'action est innée, c'est pour un meilleur mot sans utiliser embedded. Il y a l'action et ensuite il y a là où se trouve l'action, donc la situation, là où on se retrouve qui est dans le landscape. C'est quoi l'environnement où on doit faire l'acte. Et ensuite, situated in place, can you just
so situated in place is like it's sort of situated a bit more in the type of understanding we have of the place.
Ok, so, c'est la compréhension de l'environnement. Maintenant, oui, il y a l'environnement où il y a l'action qui se passe, mais on doit comprendre aussi cet environnement-là. Et ensuite, ça termine avec l'interaction. Ça, c'est maintenant entre chaque personne dans cet environnement, et on a compris le comment et le pourquoi. Pourtant, chaque individu, maintenant, ça retourne à l'idée que chaque individu peut avoir des situations différentes au niveau social ou économique ou écologique, mais tout le monde reste quand même dans cette communauté-là.
Nice.
Donc l'idée c'est vraiment de s'ancrer sur la terre, soit littéralement ou figurativement.
Okay, perfect. So this is actually one of the groups here. This is the same team that Gideon was part of, and they had to cross this lake because the workshop was actually in the middle of a salt lake. So the people they couldn't drink the water in the lake because it's salt. So they've got their clothes in those buckets and they're walking across. So this is this idea of the unexpected, how we need to work with what comes up. And that's what's really powerful about this type of approach.
Donc ça, c'est Gideon ici avec un autre groupe pour faciliter, ils étaient en route pour faire un atelier. Et l'idée, c'est que l'atelier était en plein milieu de l'eau, mais l'eau était salée, donc ils pouvaient même pas boire l'eau. You said the workshop was in the water, took place in the water, or they had to access the lake to.
What they had to do is they had to get to the island. They had to park the car, take their clothes, and then they had to walk across the lake because there's no way to get to the island apart from through the water.
Donc là où se trouvait l'atelier, c'était sur une île, mais pour avoir accès aux îles, il fallait traverser l'eau, mais l'eau était salée. Donc ça, c'est déjà tu vois l'eau, imagine, mais tu peux pas le boire parce que c'est salé. Et ils doivent trouver des façons pour s'adapter. Donc, ils ont mis leurs vêtements dans des seaux, ils tenaient leurs chaussures par les mains. Ça, c'est juste une idée qu'on a vu juste le slide précédent où on voit l'environnement et on doit s'adapter à l'environnement qui nous est donné. Mais on doit comprendre aussi pourquoi cet environnement est comme ça. Donc, le tout est quand même, on voit ici exactement l'image de juste s'ancrer dans la situation littéralement ici. Mais c'est tout ça, ça fait partie de l'apprentissage et le développement ici.
Okay, so I'm going to go through. So I'm just going to say that this same approach can be used with this same approach actually is also now we didn't realize this, but we're able to use it with communities with disability in terms of communication. So they're aware. So this same idea, we then created the this project here, where we were innovating with the fabrics and starting to create stories. And we created this other process now called envision sonography, where we imagine the world and create it with fabrics. So this also became a way we built a team of the community members with disability. So they actually, this team, so Elaine who's here, she's from Toronto, Christine's from Toronto, and then this is them in Hamilton. or Brantford actually. This one's in Brantford. This is in St Catherine's. They travelled down and they became like we were running the workshop mostly, but they became the mentor. They became the team that helped us understand how to connect to this community because they know what it's like to live with disability in ways we can't.
Donc ici on peut voir en fait c'est plus ou moins l'application du même concept du slide précédent, mais ici avec avec les gens ayant comment on dit disability en français encore, j'ai oublié. Quelqu'un ayant une disability.
I think we say handicap.
Disability, c'est des handicapés.
On dit, ok, ouais, je sais pas si en français, parce qu'en anglais.
I know it doesn't sound like good in English, but
c'est ça,
that's
donc,
how we say it.
Donc c'est ça, c'est le même concept, mais avec les
personnes à mobilité réduite.
Mobilité, ouais, voilà, c'est ça que je cherchais, mobilité réduite. Voilà, ça c'est donc ici on trouve c'est le même concept, mais ici on utilise avec les personnes ayant des personnes avec mobilité réduite, parce que déjà eux leur environnement direct est différent de la personne lambda, et au moins l'activité ici c'est que eux ils ont mis en sorte que ils ont donné ils ont mis l'environnement, ils les ont donné les outils pour que eux maintenant puissent montrer comment eux ils se communiquent entre eux et comment le monde extérieur peut communiquer avec eux et que tout le monde peut se comprendre de leur perspective. Parce que eux-mêmes, c'est eux, ils sont devenus les professionnels de cette communication-là parce que c'est eux-mêmes qui le vivent à tous les jours. Donc l'idée, c'est que l'équipe ici a donné les outils à ces personnes-là, mais ces personnes maintenant utilisent les outils pour créer leur environnement, c'est ça. Ça, il a utilisé le concept de scénographie où on crée notre monde, mais on utilise, on a utilisé ici these are bed sheets you said that were used?
Yeah. So was that a question?
Yeah, I just want to know, you said they were used, what were used here, bed sheets, or if I'm correct?
Well, we actually now we have, well, the main thing, we actually now have over 1,000 feet of fabric.
Okay.
We have, this is early on, but yeah, they basically use different sheets, different fabric materials. So we actually went out and got fabric from different textures and stuff, and yeah, basically that becomes how they can build slowly, even if they can only use their eyes and they can't use anything else. They can start to tell us where to place the fabric, which is meaningful. Again, it's the meaningfulness which is important.
Donc c'est comme s'ils créent leur propre monde. Oui, ils sont réduits en mouvement ou en mobilité, mais avec ce qu'ils peuvent faire déjà avec leurs yeux ou juste pointer des doigts ou quoi que l'on soit, ils dirigent les gens qui sont capables à placer les affaires, mais de leurs propres yeux, leur propre perspective. Donc c'est comme si c'est des metteurs en scène en fait de leur propre monde.
They're like a kind of facilitator, right?
Yeah, they're participants. They are facilitators. And they kind of co-creators.
It's like the directors of a movie in a sense, like they
makes sense.
Yeah, it's actually what they do is we do something called world building. So we just start and they slowly build the world up very slowly by placing the fabrics. And only once we've got the world starts to build, then it turns into something. So it's actually quite an interesting process. So it can take, and we actually, I don't know if we've got a video of it. We actually do it now in front of a live audience, and we done it at the Performing Arts Centre. So this is like a workshop environment, but we've actually now got it where they create this live in front of an audience. But basically it becomes this world, and we become immersed in it, and and then start to play with that. So but the main thing here is that the process over 5 years to enable that was the first piece, and then now we've got the process that enables it. The teams were able to help scale it out, and hopefully we want to scale it up so that they can tell people how to help other people.
So
so that's it basically. For that one. So I think that's thank you very much, and maybe if anyone's got any questions or anything, that would be great.
It's pretty I just want to say it's actually pretty cool. It's very very cool. It seems very it's like pushing the envelope in a way of trying to get things going, but from different, you're actually trying to get things going from different perspectives. And it's a very flexible way of doing things. You know, it's very flexible, but it still seems to be very effective. So I think it's very, very cool. Very, very cool. I like it very much.
Yeah, for me, I think it's very interesting to see that sometimes we need like a facilitator to create like a conversational like connection, whether it's with the body or the language, you know, just to make sure like we have the same reality as other people, like just in front of you. So yeah, I think your approach is really, really like interesting and necessary, actually.
Yeah. I watched the video today that you sent in the group, and it was just like, yeah, we need stuff like that, because no matter who you are, what your situation is like, a lot of these people are perfectly fine in their minds. They just can't move a certain way or think a certain way, and it's really important to include everybody in being able to create it.
And to make sure like what we think about like the reality of the other person is the real perspective the person got in everyday life, you know. So just doing this workshop like the way you just explained, I watched the video also, but just to let them being like the stage director, like recreating like the word the way they feel it and they can hear it, and you know, to in front of us like we are the other side of the screen is just like crazy. Because we could not imagine that. This is an experience you just have to have with any person, you know, to understand exactly that. Sometimes we got a word, but that word could mean something for me and something different to you. So it's really interesting, like not just to go in a global concept of things. So yes,
It shows
I agree totally. Like, yes.
It shows there's room for everybody. Like there's space for everybody. And just because someone looks different or is different, it doesn't mean that something's wrong with them. Like we all came on this earth to have a different kind of experience. And if we think of the term of spirit, like nobody's mentally child, all of that is just labels that we've named.
Exactly.
They are who they are, and they came on this planet to be who they are, how they are. So
exactly. It's a different reality.
I actually say to them now, I say like, if I don't understand what they're trying to say, that's my problem, not their problem. Do you know what I mean? So I say, I don't understand. So, and taking it that way, and it's actually one thing that's quite interesting in terms of positioning, because there's a real push to make them say perform or be an actor, and that was where we were trying to go at the beginning. But obviously, today we're talking about the community with disability now, but that's going to be physically limited, right? There's just realities there.
Yeah.
But if they become the scenographer, the live scenographer, or they become the kind of director of the narrative or of the world builder, it's almost you jump up a level, and they can choose the music. So then once you've got the world, and you know where you are, what it is, because you can do this slowly, because some of them it takes say 2 or 3 minutes to using a head switch to scan the words, right? But the nice thing about a world is the world is stable, right? A story keeps moving on, so they can't. It's not possible then, because what I'm doing now, they can only say 3 words, right? And it takes them 2 minutes. But if you're all building the same world, there's actually this really trippy moment when the world flips. You don't know what it is, and everyone's like, one person's like, I'm underwater, and then someone says, we're actually in the dinosaur era, and suddenly it's like,
okay,
it's really trippy.
Yeah. So, Mr. Hassan, with the Alter Resident, what do you think? Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ça, de cette approche-là? We cannot hear you. On peut pas t'entendre.
Le micro. Okay.
Yes.
Bonjour. Allô. Ça va bien?
Ça va très bien.
Oui, j'ai écouté un peu la conversation et si j'ai bien compris, en fait, moi je résume ça peut-être le mot qu'on dit en français, je pense qu'on dit ça en anglais, donc de se mettre dans la peau de l'autre, donc sur la peau de l'autre, dans la peau de l'autre.
Ouais.
Parce que la réalité, malheureusement, c'est qu'on est en train de vivre dans un monde occidental, ou bien dans un monde plus individualisé, donc on est en train de focuser sur nous-mêmes, et souvent, la plupart du temps, on ne voit pas l'autre.
Yes.
Donc, on ne voit pas l'autre, et c'est ça que ça fait ça fait des conflits, ou ça fait des choses qui arrivent qu'on ne comprend pas. Alors, mais on prend juste une petite pause et on se mettre à la peau de l'autre. Je ne sais pas comment on dit ça en anglais, là. Put yourself in other skin, like you know. if on prend juste le temps de voir ça, donc on va comprendre la conception de l'autre, que ce soit une personne handicapée ou que ce soit une personne de couleur ou une personne de culture ou de religion, peu importe. Juste de prendre ce concept-là, de vivre en communauté sans problème. Si on prend juste cette conception de dire, OK, mais là, on est différent, on ne pense pas pareil, peut-être autre personne, il vient d'une autre culture, ou bien il est handicapé, ou peu importe. Et, il n'y a aucune personne qui est parfaite sur cette planète-là. Donc, chaque personne a ses forces, ses faiblesses.
Sorry, could you translate that for
comprends
us?
bien le concept de vivre ça et de comprendre, c'est comme l'image des personnes qui viennent de différents villages, c'est en Afrique du Sud, ça, et qui essayent de mettre une entente ensemble, même s'ils ont des frontières, ils ont de l'eau, ils ont des choses, mais ils essayent de se mettre ensemble pour vivre ensemble, finalement. Pour vivre ensemble. C'est ça le fait, c'est de vivre ensemble en paix, sans qu'il y ait des conflits, sans qu'il y ait... Tout le monde a des différences, tout le monde a des choses, on ne pense pas pareil, mais quand même, il faut qu'on vive ensemble. Et vivre ensemble, il faut comprendre l'autre. Alors, si on n'arrive pas à comprendre l'autre, il y aura toujours des conflits.
So we're not going anywhere.
Basically,
Sorry, could you translate the global idea of this?
Yeah. Basically, what he's expressing is that this is just an advanced level of putting yourself in one shoe, where you are really just trying to understand the other person's perspective without without using your own personal bias or judgment towards it. You just want to make sure, okay, listen, like we're in position. I can be in position of giving you the tools to express yourself how you can express yourself the best, and then I can understand. Because at the end of the day, everybody wins if we function that way. He gave the example of earlier that Stephen said with the ladies in the village with the pink ribbons on the floor to represent the rivers. Everybody, that's giving the tools where, okay, here is a figurative way to express what is happening in your area of the world. Tell me what's going on. And they can each give their own individual, they each have differences, and they can each give their own individual story and perspective with the differences considered. However, the global part of it is that they're all sharing their own story, and then everybody can understand each other, because then the similarities can be worked on, and then everybody can develop or find better ways to live together moving forward. So that's in a nutshell, that's really what he's expressing, and I fully agree 100% with that. So,
and I'll tell you one thing which is kind of interesting as well with that is actually those red ribbons were actually the routes that they were carrying water, or the routes they had to walk to find the water. So that would be like their paths through the village, or But what's really interesting is it's okay. That's what I was saying about those 3 levels, but it's okay not to be able to know and not to be able to fully empathize, right? And actually what's really interesting with this narrative work is if I can't know, then what you do is with this narrative work where they speak to that landscape. So it's not so much so there are times when it can be about them sharing to me, right, and expressing, but then I still have to say, well, what do I do with that, right? But then what I say is, okay, this is the question. There's all these other things to do with water. They should deal with the water pipes, and they should deal with this. They shouldn't dump all that on you. But there's these particular things about where we can do stuff locally, where we want you. So once they understand the landscape, or they can join up the stories and have a strategic conversation. But they're having it in a way, because this is the thing, this is where the frustration is. This is why I really want to talk to you guys and others. I've been the last few years, is because in that workshop where they had all the people, that they really worked, and the people in the organization say this really, really, really works, and the strategic conversations, they're enjoying it. But can we just take one of them and put them in a committee in our war room, which is already not? And it's like, well, no, because you're now in another landscape. You're in the landscape of this, war room in South Africa, right? They use this language, but it's like, well, the landscape they know about is the landscape of that map. We need to come to their conversation. And as soon as you take one person out, there's the same problem we're all in, that they have to represent everything. And how do you represent that complexity and use it in decision making? Whereas if the questions can come in here and say, okay, well, what can we, and this is the piece which you know, it's like it's okay not to know certain things. And we actually talk about having a needs assessment, not of the community, because it doesn't make that much difference what percentage you put on there. But what's the needs assessment of the people trying to make the policies? What is it that they can't know? And it's okay. It's okay. You can't know. And it's not, you know, it's not a skin color thing. It's just a reality of that community. And the person who lives furthest in the most impoverished part and has to get the water in the most obscure way, probably is the hardest person for me to go in their shoes.
Yeah.
Because it's the most different to my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so.
And actually everybody's an artist, just building your own world around you. So that's the idea. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah, I got it.
No, it's pretty
okay
cool.
Olivier, do you have, just before to finish, something to add, to say, to ask? You can do it in French actually, because we have our dictionary, which is Terry. Perfect. On t'entend pas, we cannot hear you, monsieur.
L'ensemble, effectivement, non. J'ai dit, j'ai écouté, j'ai appris, j'ai compris ce que je pouvais comprendre, mais dans l'ensemble, j'ai bien compris que là, c'était vraiment dans un esprit de cohésion entre les différents groupes, aussi bien de mettre en commun tout ce qui est différent, savoir que personne à mobilité réduite, personne d'une autre origine, personne d'une autre... en tout cas, toutes les connexions qu'on pouvait faire sur le point de vue social, professionnel, politique, religieux, enfin, tout est mis ensemble pour donner de la place à tout le monde dans l'espace. C'est-à-dire qu'on vit comme ça, de cette façon. Je veux dire, on donne un peu de place à tout le monde et puis on fait tous nos affaires ensemble. C'est un peu ça, quoi. C'est comme disait Hassan, c'est mets-toi dans mes souliers, quoi. Voilà. Ouais. Voilà ma vie, mets-toi dans mes souliers et puis ça te permet de comprendre quelle est ma vie. Et de cette façon, moi aussi, je veux comprendre quelle est la tienne. Et de cette façon, on va faire en sorte pour cohabiter ensemble tous les deux sans empiéter l'un sur le terrain de l'autre, mais faire un terrain commun.
So sorry, you can translate, and I will have just a last question.
Yeah. So he was basically echoing the idea of just you know, understanding what other people are going through. You're going through something, but somebody else beside you may be going through something else, even though you all share the same area or you don't. But this is a way that the ground level can be set to where we can both communicate in the ways that we can best communicate, but we can try our best to make each person understand each other. That way we can both move forward on the right foot without impeding the next person from still being themselves. Because at the end of the day, these are still individual people, correct? Just individual people that have their own individual needs and perspectives. But it's the idea of considering all of that and understanding all of that and still finding a common ground where everybody can still develop. So that was just his way of echoing the same idea, which we're all, I guess, in agreement of. So yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Cheers.
So my question was like, do you think you guys individually, like this is something you can, or you're trying to do, or you're doing every day in your life? So you see, because we're talking about the workshop, but what is your approach? Just thinking about it, I was thinking like about myself actually when you're like sharing the, you know, all the images and those things. I was like, okay, is this something like I deal with every day, or am I able like to handle it every day? Am I trying even like just to do this kind of approach, trying to put myself in the shoe of or shoes of somebody else? So the question is open actually.
Yeah.
Vous pensez que c'est quelque chose que vous arrivez à faire tous les jours ou que vous devez travailler là-dessus? What do you think?
Well, one thing I would say as well is that, yeah, there's certain things you can really get close and just listen to people, but there's also times, and we don't have that opportunity as much in the north, so to speak, but just there's some things where you need that intersubjectivity is now a big thing in psychology, because basically psychology was the individual, sociology was, okay, so I can tell you what you're doing, and I can get lots of people and take an average, and I can tell you social stuff.
I know.
But the most interesting stuff is when you've got 6 people like this dynamic is really very hard. But this piece about when you get people together and you start to create dynamic meaning in the space, in the and you're starting to tune, and you feel that you have to, it actually only happens during these magical times. You know, you don't do it all day, every day. So there's a bit of like, how do I bring that into my life with the learning from that? And then how do we create these spaces? And it's been really hard online. Like our group with the community with disabilities all been on hold, you know, so it's been really hard on Zoom, but I'm trying to bring it into an online platform called Gather and do like this online, you can have like a bar and you can have like a workshop space. So I can share that at some point, and we can meet there for a coffee. But you're right, it's like, I think there's a bit of both. I think, how do I bring it into my life? But then how do I bring that kind of, like the chief sitting around the tree with the community? How do we get that? And how do we make more chances for that to happen? And actually to value it. It's not just like, oh, that was fun, which it is, but there can be times when you get meaning out of that, you know, that, and it's not meaning you can get any other way. So I suppose that's, that's my thing, so.
So somebody else, and then I don't know. Or you can still thinking about it after the workshop, no problem.
Yeah, I don't have an immediate answer to that question, to be honest.
Okay.
So I'm gonna. It's some personal homework to do, given what we learned from Stephen today. So I think it's something. All this is an ongoing process for me anyway. It's not, nothing is finite. It's not really a finish line to it. Donc every day it's a process.
Of course, you're learning every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so merci beaucoup. So something else, Stefan? So thank you first, just sharing that approach with us. Happy again just to collaborate with you, and at any time you can, if you have other things like to share with us, like I know for now we're online, we're going to try to see if we can do things differently, like in very approachable days, I don't know. But yes, thank you again. Merci beaucoup.
Lovely.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. And look forward to maybe collaborating with you all together sometime.
soon, one day soon, hopefully.
Okay,
So thank you guys.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Have a nice Sunday.
And, next month we will be back with Hassan's workshop.
Hassan with here with the clock behind.
Yeah.
Okay, Alter Resident. So he will talk about. You can maybe introduce yourself, Hassan. Tu peux nous dire ce que tu vas présenter la prochaine fois, next month.
En tant que musicien, donc je suis musicien, donc je suis enseignant de musique aussi, donc je vais présenter l'esprit, bon, mais l'esprit de chant sacré, qui est le chant Gnawa, donc qui est d'origine africaine. Donc je vais parler un peu d'histoire, un peu de style, ça remonte quand, et c'est quoi ce style-là donc qu'on trouve en Afrique du Nord. Donc, je vais parler grosso modo de tout l'esprit spirituel de ce chant sacré.
Yeah, Terry, can you just tell us?
So basically, next week he'll be speaking about. Comment on prononce Gnawa, c'est ça?
Gnawa.
En fait, Gnawa, c'est un mot qui vient du Guinée, mais ça fait comme des siècles, tout ce qui vient de l'Afrique.
Ouais.
Ils appellent les Gnawa des Africains.
Gnawa, ok.
Maroc.
Ça restait comme ça, mais le mot Gnawa, c'est vraiment des Africains, du couleur noire qui sont. Mais c'est une histoire. Donc, où les rois à l'époque de l'Afrique du Nord, qui les ont amenés en tant qu'esclaves. Alors, ils ont amené tout un champ, toute une influence culturelle en Afrique du Nord. Donc, c'est ça.
So he's basically going to give us an idea of the whole Gnawa aspect of whether it be the music, it could be there's a musical aspect to it, there's a mythical aspect to it, there's a what's the word I'm looking? There's a sacred aspect to it that he's going to present to us in a very interesting fashion that we'll be able to get familiar with in a nutshell. If I can't say more because I'm going to learn with you guys. So
juste une question, c'est que lorsqu'on parle de Gnawa, on parle pas de la musique parce que c'est vraiment c'est une sorte de religion.
C'est
plus le chant, c'est plus les prières. Présentement, c'est utilisé comme musique parce qu'on parle de la musique Gnawa, mais normalement c'est pas une musique, c'est un chant, c'est une prière.
Un rituel.
It's like a chant, chanting. Okay, cool. Right. Well, there's a very spiritual part of it that we'll be learning from as well. For sure.
Nice. I love that.
So this is it. Okay. So merci beaucoup. So thank you everybody just being there. So Stefan, we're gonna send you, of course, like the recording. So then, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
Will do. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bye. Have a nice Sunday. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, Selma.